Welcome everybody to Red's Ramblings. Today I have with me Yungho, originally from South Korea, then moved to Chile, currently living in California. Yungho, go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody.
Hi, I'm Yungho. I also went to college in Minnesota.
Okay, all right.
Part of the experiencing the winter in Minnesota was one reason I wanted to move to LA.
Oh man, I don't blame you there.
I remember the first thing I did after coming to LA was looking at my, what are those things called? Those really thick jackets that you kind of go like, oh.
Yeah,
because
puffer
to
jackets.
survive the winter.
Right.
Yeah, those things. And I was like, oh, I don't need this anymore. And I just threw it away.
Yeah, no, I have grandparents that live in Wyoming. And, they talk about, it's like, I think last time I talked to my granddad, it was like -6 degrees outside. Nope. Not doing that.
You mean Celsius or Fahrenheit?
Oh, you're in America, sir. This is Fahrenheit now.
Fahrenheit? Okay.
So, at what age did you move to Chile, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so our family, we moved to Chile when I was 8.
Okay.
8. Yeah.
And then how long from that did you move to the States?
Yeah, I did pretty much all my K-12 school. So from second grade until graduating high school. So I was 19 and came to the States.
Did the family move to the States, or was that your decision?
No, my family moved to Peru afterwards. And
Peru?
I came to the States for college. Yeah, Peru.
Okay.
So they're not in Peru. Yeah.
What did you graduate with, or degree, whatever, major in college? I didn't go to college, so I don't know the term.
Anthropology.
Oh shit! Okay.
Yeah.
My wife took that. I loved it when she was in that class for a bit.
Oh, cool.
She didn't major in it, but yeah, I was one of those that I thought was like an animal teaching or lessons, but no, it's about humans. So right then I was like interested, like, okay, hell yeah, I can get behind this. And she was telling me about stuff. But so I wanted to, I've yet to speak with anybody from Chile or South Korea. So thankfully you've done your childhood essentially split between both of those countries. And I will say from the get-go, I mainly looked into South Korea. That's mainly what I looked into. So hopefully you can help out a good bit of that. Because one thing I learned recently, I don't know if you've seen the show on Netflix, Sweet Home.
The one about zombies?
Yes. Kind of.
No, I'm scared of horror movies.
Really?
I can't watch it. I heard people recommended it to me. I was like, oh, there's zombies here, no thanks.
Well, it's I wouldn't consider it horror, but it does have monsters and something like that. But it's a South Korean TV show, and one of the things I learned from that, so I want to get yours as well, is the birth. I guess it's like a childhood tradition. For South Korea, well, one is technically the day you're born, you're officially 1 year old, whereas everywhere else, it's not till a year after you're born. So there's that, and then this tradition of having a pencil, I think like some money and something else, and whatever the child gravitates to is like foretelling of the future. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah.
Because that's cool. I like that.
Yeah. So it's in Korea there's this old school age counting system, which is what you described, that people are born with 1 year, and then under that counting system, you gain age on January 1st.
Okay.
By the lunar calendar system.
Right.
But for a lot of the people, the lunar calendar system is yet another relic from the old times, and it's get confusing. So a lot of times people, if that's correct, I think people count it now on January 1st under the solar calendar, which is what we normally use, January 1st. And under the lunar system, it's around late January.
It's like right now. It's around like right now.
Right. Yeah, in a few weeks. So yeah, so there's that, and people are cognizant that that's the old school system, and people are cognizant that outside of Korea, I think China and Japan and Taiwan, East Asia must have some sort of system similar to that. But people are cognizant that outside of it, like in the US and elsewhere, the system is different, which is also used in Korea. And people are constantly jumping back and forth between the old school system if you're talking to your grandparents, because that's what they care about. When they're talking to your peers, I think when I was around Korean schoolmates, like in the mid-90s, we talked about the year you were born. That was the most sure-proof way to shorten this time of like, oh, I'm 18. And then they ask you again, oh, so is that the old school or the new system?
Right.
And then you need to clarify again. So if you just say your year of birth, there's no confusion.
Gotcha.
So people are jumping in back and forth with the two systems. And sometimes when people start to get into the mid-late 20s and start to not feel so good about being old, they start going with the Western system. And they're like, well, under the Western system, I'm still in my 20s, that kind of thing. So there's that going on. And I remember I was curious about this and looked this up. What's the origins of this, and like why do we have the old system and all that? I forgot it by now. It's written somewhere on the internet. Like the
I say you went to school for anthropology, man.
I read it a little bit. Oh, interesting, and I forgot about it.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, anthropology consists of people reading about culture. People spend a lot of time just studying and describing the culture for outsiders in detail. I forgot. What was it? I don't remember.
Well, did you when you were young, did your family do that whole laid out, and whatever you crawled to, like the pencil or whatever it was?
Yeah. So that's the 100-day party, which is the 돌잔치. So when after the baby is born, after it's 100 days, about 3 months, they do a little celebration, and that's when they do have you pick the things, and based on what you picked, there are some items that traditionally are placed that are just, what should we say, standard fare.
Right.
Like pencil. What else is there? Pencil. Something related to, I guess, money.
Yeah, there was something related to money, and there was.
And then depending on the families or the parents' preferences, there are things that kind of slide it in, hoping that they pick it.
Right. Yeah.
So the final inventory, which is usually 4 or 5, it varies from family to family. They just kind of manipulate it.
Yeah. Like if it's a family of doctors or something, they'll put something medically related, possibly.
Yes.
So what did you
I don't
pick?
remember what I picked again.
I
don't. I think when you're as you're growing up, especially your grandparents keep telling you what you picked.
Right.
Maybe it was pencil. I don't.
Well, I mean, you went to college, so that'd be good at least. Yeah. Well, that's cool because I know a lot of Asian countries have go by the different calendars, like the Chinese calendar and all that kind of stuff. Like on every now that you're in the States, every Chinese restaurant, their takeout menu or something has the Chinese calendar somewhere on the back with different Chinese zodiacs and whatnot. And I remember particularly for the Chinese
are different degrees of being into it. So for example, I recently learned that my aunt's husband, who also lives in the States, counts his age, celebrates only his lunar year birthday, which happens, it's a different date, but somewhere in the fall, I think, Because he's more serious about the lunar year system.
Yeah,
there's that as well. But yeah.
Yeah, because I know, like, I don't believe in like horoscopes and zodiac sign, none of that crap. That's all. But it is a cool thing to look into regardless and read about. And I know me and my wife were looking into ours at one point, and they have like the compatibility, how your sign is supposedly compatible with other signs. And thankfully, mine and my wife's actually are compatible. So if it is true, that's great. That's going to work out for us, hopefully.
You looked at the Chinese horoscope? Is that what you're saying?
If I remember right, it was that. And yeah, we were, because we're like 2 weeks apart in birthdays, actually. But we were, I guess, wherever we were, I don't remember what the signs were for us, but they were different, but they were also compatible. So I was like, hey, if this is actually true, that's a good sign for us then,
Your sign is determined by the year you're born.
Right. So she's 91, I'm 90. So they were different, but still compatible. So hopefully this marriage thing works out, So what do you do day to day? What's your regular job?
So after graduating college through 2019, 2 years ago now, I worked in a non-profit organization, immigrant rights non-profit organization. So there I did different things. What did I do there? Doing organizing, working with college students, working with Korean seniors, health insurance, rallies, different things, design websites. And then I left that job, and then I've been trying to understand what am I doing. The things I do are similar, so I guess I guess for the layperson, the briefest explanation is like working in the field of politics, maybe. A little bit like that, I guess. Yeah.
So since you've been here in the States, have you traveled back home to South Korea?
Yeah. I went, last time I was in Korea was 2006.
Okay, all right.
So not so often, but yeah.
Yeah. And where's one of the things that you miss about stuff? Because I'm sure, that I know definitely depending on where you are in California, there's, I know they have Chinatowns all over. There might be like a little Koreatown somewhere possibly nearby. But, even though we have a little bit of everybody here, you still probably, I'm sure, don't get that hometown feel,
I guess my hometown feel I get it in Chile. And I guess one thing that's very characteristic of the town I live in. So I live in a town very much in the south. So it's very cold, rainy, throughout the year. And people walked a lot from place to place. And I remember one thing you could feel as you're walking is smell of the earth after the rain. And because it rains so much, you could always smell it. And then the house is burning wood inside to keep the house warm. So I remember that. So I think that will give me, and I imagine would the Pacific Northwest be a little bit like that? At least weather-wise, it's like that. But I don't know if there's a lot of houses that are burning wood. That's not very environmentally
fireplace. Because like we have a fireplace in this house, thankfully. But over in California, not a lot of rain over there. Not a lot of rain at all.
Yes.
Super hot, and that's not for me. I'm a redhead, so me and the sun, we're not friends. We don't get along. Me and that guy up there, sun-wise, So do you before Oh no, go ahead, please.
So I think if being in a town that had like a lot of the house is burning wood and stuff, I think that would have that home feel. I remember we used to while living in Chile, we used to go back to Korea every once in a while, like every 2-3 years.
Yeah.
I remember the strongest experience in Korea was when I went back during high school, like 97.
Mhm.
And in places that are distant from each other, there's a lot of things, like the mood is different. It's hard to
Okay.
describe, and I'm not sure if I'm like being misled by other sensory perception, but like the mood is different. You can feel that the air, there's something in the air that's different,
Right.
and the city noises that you
Okay.
hear, and you have this sensation that, well, I'm in a very different place from where I was when I stepped on the airplane.
Right.
And so that was like in Korea, and I got that terrible summer that's hot and humid. Oh, I never want to be hot and humid summer. That's the worst.
Oh yeah.
Korea
I agree.
has a very strong, not the strongest on earth, but very strong hot and humid summer. And you just sit there, you try to be near cold water, and you don't want to do anything.
Yeah, because you were saying you were born in Busan, is how it's said, correct?
Yes. Busan. Yes.
And which kind of makes me laugh a little bit that you don't like horror, because there was that big horror movie that came out, Train to Busan, which, well, one, I've yet to watch either, but it's like Train to Your Homeland, essentially. But you'd never been there or watched it for horror movies. I gotta ask then, since you don't like horror movies, is there a reason? Like, did one as a child scare you or something? Like what caused that?
No, I guess there's people who enjoy being scared. I don't enjoy being scared, so that's.
Oh, I agree there. Like, my wife, she watches horror movies all the time. That's all she does. Horror movies and true crime stuff. And me, I'm like, I'll watch monster movies, but horror things just aren't my thing either, I would say. Are there, I would imagine, because I've spoken with people from like other Asian countries like the Philippines and Malaysia and whatnot, and there are some stories passed down of urban legends specifically. There was one from the Philippines, if I remember correctly, it was the Manananggal, which is some like ghoulish entity or something. Are there any South Korean type urban legends that you can recall?
So when you say urban Asian legend, I imagine it's more contemporary, like 19th, 20th century? Or are you saying like traditional scary stories?
Yeah, scary stories.
There's a lot. Usually it involves a woman who had things that were very unfair done to her.
Okay.
What's English for 억울하다? 억울하다 is this feeling that either someone or a group of people intentionally did unfair things to you, or that there's no intention, but things turned out in the worst way possible,
right?
For your life, and as a result, you feel there's a word in Korean. I'm not sure how to translate that in English. It's 억울하다, and Koreans use it a lot. And I'm realizing, does this word even exist? Let me look that really quick on Google.
No problem.
억울하다. Oh, they translate as unfair. But I don't think 억울하다 is exactly unfair, because doesn't unfair imply intention? There needs to be people involved in order for things to be
I would
unfair.
Agree.
What if there's what happens if you're, living in your family and then one day thunderstruck? Unfortunate? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
So anyway, so there's this word, and some of the people who dig deep into this think that there's something unique to the Korean historical national lived experience with Japanese colonialism, all these things, and World War II. That like people think that it's like deeply ingrained in people's experience, and people call it's the culture of Han. And again, Han is again related to this feeling of things not turning. Anyway, so the urban legends go, there's this woman who has this deep feeling and usually dies or passes away or is killed, and while keeping that deep feeling of like, things have been very unfair. So then then villagers can see her as a ghost roaming around, and the ghost is generally generally just sad because of the things that happen. So she's sad and angry, but not at anything in particular.
Right.
Or wants revenge. Usually men who did something to her.
Right.
Or her family or something. And then there's like spiritually shamans who come and they're like, oh, what's going on here? Oh, there's these very strange things. And the shamanist goes and finds out, and she says, oh, look, didn't someone die here 10 years ago? And they're like, yes. And didn't she get killed by her husband? They're like, yes. How do you know? This is all because it's happening. So there's a lot of stories like that, and this setting is so cliche that it gets used so often. It appears in every K-drama, and So that's I think the prototypical Korean scary urban legend.
Yeah. So is this?
Sociologists have interpreted it as a way of saying, why does Korea have so many of these, and why they're always women? And it shows that there's this ongoing social oppression towards women in many aspects, both pre-modern and modern. So that's the biggest one.
Yeah, I do know the one that I recall from the Philippines. If I remember correctly, it was the Manananggal, and it was a woman character. It was like basically a vampire, essentially. I don't remember everything about it, but I remember the way it looked. It was like from the waist up, essentially, and it had wings, and it, probably hunted men, or something like that. But it was I'm sorry if I'm wrong, Philippines, if you end up watching. Jenny, I know you watch all my stuff, so sorry. I know I can pronounce it right, Manananggal. I just like that, the way that rolls off the tongue. Manananggal is cool. But I remember that one, and I never thought of it that way until you just said it. But I think culturally around the world too, a lot of those type of stories feature a woman. And if it was, like you said, like they were either abused by a husband or whatever or something, family. There's a lot of them. Yeah, I never really made that connection, but a lot of them are. Oh, okay. Now I'm going to be thinking about that all day. I'm going to be thinking about all cultural spooky stories now, and like, oh, that's a woman. That's a woman. Like taking babies and something like that. All right.
Something visually that's connected in all these women ghost stories in Korean legends is there's a typical visual that goes. So I think the typical visual, this stereotypical visual is the woman. So you spot the woman ghost like in the abandoned house or at night in the streets.
Right.
And the description will go, so she's wearing this white sobo. What is sobo? It's a type of clothing that's like I guess the easiest way of describing it is like easiest way of describing it's like a long gown style dress. And it's both, and he has an uppercase and a lowercase, but both are white. And it could be, it borderlines between, because sometimes that could be underwear, but that could also be the inner layer of your clothes, and there being an outer layer that has more colors in it. But you're wearing just that, which is what you wore comfortably inside the home, I think. And then, so she's wearing that. She has long hair, very pale, and if the ghost died of, I guess this is more typical, but if the ghost died of something, some physical accident, that physical accident or damage, like half of her is gone or bleeding or something, is still there. So that's the stereotypical woman ghost visual.
Right.
So yeah, in horror movies, that person appears and you know immediately, oh, that's the ghost, and it's gonna do horrible things to the main characters.
Oh yeah.
In this movie.
Turn around. Yeah.
Yes, run.
So, and you moved to Chile, you say when you were 8 years old, correct?
Yeah.
And so how was that? Because one, did you know, is it Spanish or is it Portuguese that's spoken mainly over there? Spanish. Did you know Spanish before moving, or did you learn that after you guys had moved?
Oh, yeah. I learned when I was moving. So my parents are missionaries. My dad is pastor. So he felt called to do mission in somewhere in Latin America and went to Chile. And I remember we were like, oh, we're moving to this place. And we were like, oh, okay. Me and my brother were like, oh, okay. We're moving. So like, it's very far. You need to sleep like 6 times.
Right.
Sleep and wake up 6 times just until we arrive. Because we're, oh, that's very far. And they speak this other language. So we learned to count to 5 in preparation for our arrival. We're like 1, 2, 3. So yeah, but I think when you're young, picking up a language is not that hard. Right. You're surrounded by people who speak the language.
Right.
So I don't have memories of how the very early attempts of learning, like the first year or so. I don't remember any of that. I just remember it was relatively easy, and I don't remember how long it took me, but I just recall it as being relatively easy.
Yeah. So you're fluent then, I would imagine, in Spanish and obviously South Korean as well.
Not quite. So I think people's proficiency just goes up and down depending on how much you use it.
Okay.
So after entering college, I think the amount of Spanish I was using would dramatically go down.
Right.
Korean, not so much. Korean, I kept reading stuff on the internet stuff. There's a lot of like topics I like to follow in Korean. Not so much, I guess, the past 5 years, but so there's that. And after doing that, because I was proficient enough to do like live interpretation and like translating like legal documents in Spanish.
Yeah.
But I remember like 7 years after graduating college, because in college at least I was regularly, actually even in college I wasn't using a whole lot of Spanish, but in 2012 I remember I was interpreting at this workshop from English to Spanish and back, and I noticed that I was having a lot of trouble doing it. And part of it is because it was a political workshop, and I had only been learning politics jargon in English, and not in Spanish at all. So I was like, I don't know how to say any of these things. I never said any Spanish. And part of it is it had gotten very rusty. So I've been trying to pick up on it the past few years, trying to use more Spanish and meet more people.
Yeah.
Spanish, of course. Yeah. In Korean, it hasn't been so bad because my workplace, I spoke Korean in the workplace the past 15 years and also go to Korean church. So
Right.
there's this minimum level, and also on the internet laws, there's
Right.
minimum level of using.
Yeah. So I would imagine as well, being a young kid going from South Korea to, well, South America, you know, over there in Chile, huge lifestyle change, like in what you see, foods you're eating. How did that go? I mean, that's got to be like a 180 essentially.
I don't think it was a big deal.
Really?
Yeah, so one thing is a lot of Koreans have, both young and old, have this strong attachment to very defined forms of food.
Okay.
So starting with kimchi. Yeah.
Right.
So there's a saying that Koreans can't go like 3 days without eating kimchi. I'm fine without eating kimchi for years. So I never had this attachment to specific kinds of food, and I think still, it's still the same. Why was that? Maybe it was because like mom was cooking food at home and she was very creative, I think, with the cooking. So we were eating all kinds of different things, and I think we grew used to that. And also, Chile back then had very few Koreans. So overall, there are 1,500 Koreans in Chile back then.
Okay.
In the city we live in, Temuco, there were 20 Koreans. So
really?
It's a small city. Statistically it was over 100, but it felt like a 30,000 people city. So as you're walking down the street, so there's this, so from my high school to home, it was like 6 miles, 10 miles, something like that. And most of the time I would just walk it with friends, and we would
okay.
And sometimes while you're walking, you'd meet the other Korean, and be like, oh, hi, because
oh yeah.
So when there's so few Koreans, there's no Korean supermarket, and that means that some of the key ingredients for making authentic Korean food, you can't get it.
Right.
You need to get it shipped from. Can you get it in the capital? I'm not sure. I think you might need to get it shipped from Argentina, where there's more Koreans or something. So there's that issue. I didn't have that. In terms of lifestyle, I don't know. I think it was fine. Now, something that changes in your school life when you're in a place that has so few Koreans is that for every Chilean student I met, I was the first Asian person ever at their meeting.
Right.
Any person outside of the usual racial makeup in the neighborhood. So So I think people were poking fun of that a lot. Like when in elementary school, they're like, oh, there's
sure.
And there's this I don't know where it came from, but when in elementary school, in lower elementary school, like first grade, second grade, third grade, or like in pre-kinder, teachers, in order to get the children to get into the habit of always washing their hands, they tell them, you need to be always be washing your hands, or you're dirty Chinese. That's what they. And I think it's
no.
So, and I think it's a play on words. It's a play on words. I never dig too much into why this is the case, but I think it's a play on words that there's this slang word, specifically in Chilean and Peruvian Spanish, that's cochino. and that just means you are dirty, but you're, I think cochino is like slightly endearing or like child speak way.
Yeah. Okay.
Now cochino rhymes with chino, which is Chinese.
Right.
And that probably coupled with the fact that there are a lot of Chinese workers coming to like Peru, mostly in other regions to work as workers back in the early 19th century. Maybe mixed with all this, it came up. Anyway, so the teachers, they're using this mnemonic technique to remind children to wash their hands, and they're like, you need to wash your hands or else chino cochino. And then people are like, chino cochino, chino cochino. And then finally they found the chino. And they're like, oh, great, chino cochino. So yeah, I remember,
Right.
and if there's a fight and they wanna like mock at you for being Asian, that's like easiest thing to
Right.
So, so yeah, I remember that in the early elementary school years. But the other thing is, if you're the only person from a different race in the whole school, everyone's curious.
Oh yeah.
Everyone's curious and they wanna, find out about this weird country that you come from.
Right.
So I think middle school, I never had to bother to, because I moved schools a lot. During the 11 years I was in Chile, I moved schools like, I don't know, 8 times or something.
Dang.
So
Okay.
I never had to put too much effort to find friends because people would come to me.
Just go. Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah. And they're like, hey, what do they eat in Korea? Do they live in a house?
Right.
Do they use spoons or do they use only the chopsticks to eat?
Right.
So many questions, so many. Because people had like no idea, what this faraway place is, and
I mean, that's the early days of the internet.
Yes. I remember in high school, I spent a ton of time, or actually not only, in high school, I spent a ton of time people teaching classmates how to read Korean, because reading and writing Korean is super easy compared to other, compared to like Chinese or Japanese or other like East Asian languages. So you can learn it in like the basics in like 10 minutes.
Really?
So, teaching them, and they'll try to write words using that. Yeah, that was fun. And then in college, everything changed. In college, like in the US, so
right.
Everyone's from a different country.
Right. Oh yeah.
So yeah. So that's what it was like, I think, in Chile.
Yeah, I know. Correct me if I'm wrong. One of the things when I was looking into South Korea is the education system. So one of the things it said was the education system over in South Korea very, very strict, very stringent in the sense like, so now that you're in the States, kids usually go to school from 8 to 2 or 8 to 3, right? Whereas in South Korea, it was like whatever to 6 o'clock in the afternoon, or like I think they said like high schoolers went to 10 o'clock at night, and depending on other grades, you would be there studying till like midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. And these are children. Like, I'm sure that had to be a big difference. Like also kind of like relaxing too, to sort of get out of that. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, so let's see. So yeah, that happens in Korea, and I think there's like different socio-economic reasons for why this came to be. So let's see, what are the reasons? And people trying to reform the system have been, in Korea, have been like digging into that. I've been following that conversation a little bit, like on Twitter and so forth.
Okay.
So something that people bring up a lot, and let's see, one thing is how Korea was a So in pre-modern times, during the feudal times up until the 19th century, Korea was this kingdom, and it was a kingdom just like China, very similar to China. It was kingdom ruled by bureaucrats, people who dealt with writings and documents. Right. And those were the high-ranking officers who were having a good life, getting paid a lot, as opposed to engineers. There's this long-time thinking that people who don't dirty their hands with farm work and are sitting inside the office dealing with paperwork, that's the good life. So, right. So there's that one thing. The other thing is that there have been a lot of corruption historically, and also I think there's still a lot of corruption, but a lot of corruption has been coming down the past 30 years, especially in the post-war, during the colonial occupation of Japan, the post-World War II Korea, there's a ton of corruption, and there's a lot of national demand to lessen the corruption. And one of the ways that college administrators thought that they could lessen the corruption is by making things entirely mathematic. So, and now after 50 years, we see this difference between the US admission system and Korea, but also Korea wasn't that different from Chile. So maybe there's similar reasonings, but in Korea, you take this college entrance exam, the SAT.
Yep.
You have only one chance. You're aware of the system? You have only one chance in the year.
Yeah, it was probably going to pronounce it incorrectly, so please correct me. It's like Sunying or something like that.
Sunung, yes.
Sunung, yes. And your family and friends would be at the entrance to the building with like candies and treats for you to do the test. Yeah. I read a little bit about that.
It's the one test that's gonna decide your life, right? At least back in the 90s.
Right. Yeah.
So you take that test, and you take your verbal, history, math, English test, and different universities will compute those scores based on some weighing system, depending on the specialty that you're going to choose, medicine, engineering, whatever. And they just put people in a list, descending list, and they're like, we're going to pick 30 this year. They pick the top 30, and that's it. That's the end of the story for the admission system. So
how many names?
US,
30 out of how many would you hundreds or what?
Well, they just decide 30 because let's say, I don't know, let's say Seoul National University History Department.
Oh, okay.
I just made up the 30, so don't focus on that.
I got you.
Let's say they have spots for 50. Yeah, they have the infrastructure for 50. So you take 50 and that's it.
Gotcha.
So compare that to the US. I mean, I guess a lot of parents across the world, even in the US, parents think that that's how admissions is done, right? And that's why they're so focused on. Is it? Do your parents think that the college admissions works that way? Your scores listed in this descending order?
I mean, it would make sense to me. It would make sense to me. Obviously, you're going to want the kid, the individual who scored high, because they're probably going to be better off in that class than the other. So, I mean, it makes sense on paper. I don't know how it actually works anymore, but again, my wife's in college, so not me.
So in the US, I mean, it's not entirely not like that, but I think in the US, that is at most 20% of the story. Yeah. And then there are other things that go into this.
Yep.
And they
money
from a range, and then the parents were more some money, but also other things no, there are other things that go into this. It's a whole mix of, and I don't want to sound like this college admissions officers, but it's more complex, and I guess one way to call it is it's a comprehensive evaluation. It's like a job interview. You don't get sorted by your scores and then sorted. It's like a job interview. So and a lot of old school parents have trouble understanding. They say, well, my child scored more than this other child. And this whole thing. And in Korea, that was a serious issue, I guess, in the 50s. So we have very much settled into the system where it's entirely score-based. And because it's entirely score-based, and people have a strong preference for these clerical careers, which in today's jargon would be, were lawyers a desired job in the 90s? I'm not sure. Maybe lawyers, but I guess people working in the big companies like Samsung or something. Doing quote unquote business. Those were the desired jobs. And so what that brought on is very high competition in the high-ranking universities. Starting with the Seoul National University, and everyone cramming into these very few departments with their scores, and that meant that the scoring. Let's say the scoring starts at 1,000 and goes down to 0. So people who are competing were like the people who got into the department each year were like the scores were like 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 999.98. That was the kind of competition people were facing. And there's this rabbit and I forget the expression, rabbit and something race, where the education department would be like, well, it's crazy. We can't have like 20,000 scorers. So let's make the test harder so that we can see 1,995 and 998 so that we can see more difference between the scores.
Right.
And then the parents going crazy like, oh, the tests are harder. We have to prepare harder and score higher. and this endless arm race between the education department trying to make the system more normal. Right. And the parents really trying to get their children to the system and going crazy. Now, that's a story until the 90s. That's a story until the 90s. And I mean, to an extent, it still goes on. Yeah. But I think the Asian financial crisis of 1997 changed this very deeply. So Korea was growing economically from the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s very fast. And then the Asian financial crisis hit in 1997. And what that meant is the unemployment grew by a ton. I don't know exactly by how much, but a ton of people who thought they had lifetime jobs at a big company lost their jobs. They were forced to, they're fired because the company was downsizing. And it meant that a ton of people who are young, who went to the top universities, were no longer getting good paying jobs or good jobs. And Korea hasn't really, the stock prices went up and the companies have been doing well, but this whole employment situation, Korea hasn't really recovered from that situation from 97.
Wow.
And it's crazy. So we have like 20 years during which it was hard for the young labor force to get jobs, or at least, I mean, you can get jobs where you get paid like $4 an hour at a convenience store. Those are there. Right. But the good jobs where you study so hard and so forth. So there's this new trend among young people and among even parents even, which is, well, there's no hope anymore. You're not gonna make it.
Oh man.
So I mean, there's still some parents who are like, well, maybe you should try to do this and so forth. But there's a growing number of people who are like, I'm not gonna go to college, it's a waste of money. Right. Or I'm gonna go to college, and I'm not gonna go to the top college. I'm gonna go to this like university in my city, which is shit, or they think it's shit. Right. And I'm not gonna do my homework. I'm not gonna do anything. I'm just gonna fail college or maybe just barely pass it and have a degree, but this degree doesn't mean anything because I can't get jobs, and so forth. So yeah, there's that situation going on, and I don't know what the long-term implication of that is going to be, but yeah, so there's like, while at the top, there's people who are still like clenching to it and trying to get to the communist. So yeah, there's that going on. I remember when I was in Korea in like the late 80s, I was in first grade. I'm not sure why this middle-class family sent their children to music institutes. So I went and learned piano.
Right.
Because that's useless for college. But I guess some people, they're like, well, it gives you social cachet. You have
I know.
This hobby.
Studies show too that knowing a musical instrument helps with learning altogether. They're correlated as well.
It helps you with math and physical reasoning and so forth.
Yeah, they're pretty correlated.
But anyway,
sometimes.
so I did that. I think I went to 3 hagwons. So hagwon is the privatized part of education that Korea grew like crazy during, maybe they grew 70s and 80s, probably when they grew. So people have been unable to translate it, so they just call it hagwon now. Okay. But you go to school. I'm in second grade in elementary school. I go to school. School ends at, when does it end? 2 p.m. I'm not sure. 2 p.m. And then go directly to my first hagwon. The hagwon sends a little minivan to pick up the kids from our school who go to that hagwon. Yeah. So we go to the first hagwon to learn piano, then go to the second hagwon to learn math, and then go to the third hagwon to learn taekwondo.
Yes.
The martial arts.
Yes.
So these privatized institutes who teach you academic subjects is interesting. They teach you a combination of a review over the same things you learn in school. Right. And they teach in advance of the next year. Okay. Yeah. Or you're gonna learn the next year. Yeah. Yeah. So I was doing those 3 hagwons, and even after coming to Chile, I think the parents were not feeling safe, I guess, in the public system. So I was having tutors because they're much cheaper to get tutors in Chile than in Korea. I was having tutors in all kinds of subjects. Now, so there's that area, and then the other area is the private educational market. So all kinds of stuff that people sell, saying that it's good for education, for a child's brain development. And it goes from these ridiculous machines that they say you need to put around your child's head while they sleep, and they emit some beta rays and they develop whatever. Also a thing called squill something. So there's those things, and the other things are books. So they sell you books, and some of those books were good stuff. Because when we moved to Chile, my parents' book, and these books are sold in packages. So when we moved to Chile, my parents bought these books and we brought them to Chile. It was a huge ball. It was a huge book. You could fill a bookshelf this big with those books. And they're all these educational books. So the educational books, I remember there was this 70 book series and photo book series about science, I think. So there's 70 books and they're like this thin, and they had these high quality glossy pictures in them. And they're like, let's learn about what's chinita. Ladybug. Let's learn about ladybugs. So there's this whole book about how ladybugs lay eggs, how they come out of eggs, how the larvae grow, what do they eat,
Yeah.
how do they mate, the whole ecosystem, what kind of birds eat ladybugs, how do they die, how can you grow a ladybug at home, and another book about icebergs. What are icebergs? And so there's that science series.
Yeah.
And there's a Korean history series. There's a world history series. Those are the high quality ones. And the others are like children's stories or something. Yeah.
Is it true? One of the things
these books are
Oh, I was wondering. I looked into something about when we were talking about education. That geography. One of the articles I read said geography is not really taught in South Korea.
I have no idea.
Really?
But that can't be. No. I did.
Yeah, that sounds odd.
I did study using Korean high school books back in high school, and no, there's geography. Now, I don't know if there has been change in the last 20 years.
Okay.
But no, I don't think that could.
Yeah, that sounds strange.
They need every excuse to push students to get lower scores in this test. So I can't imagine them shrinking the test phase. They must be expanding the score phase, not shrinking.
Yeah, it was some YouTube channel. I think it was like 101 facts about South Korea, and it was something. Yeah, and it said that geography is not really taught in South Korea, which I thought was just strange for any country not to teach a huge part of the world. There's tons of countries, 195 and 97 to be exact. How could you not ever teach geography? That's just makes no sense.
Although something that has been a trend, I think, that's been happening with education is in the 80s and 90s, I think the education has been narrowly focused on college admissions. And college is becoming irrelevant. So now education is narrowly focusing in getting a job in a big company.
Right.
So that has become the big thing. So how do the big companies hire people? They don't give you a world history test anymore. Yeah. Although there's been new trends where they do some of that too. But for a very long time in the early 2000s, the trend was doing a test, looking at your college, do you go to a good college or not, and your English test scores. Because supposedly you're doing trade with English-speaking countries and you need to talk with these foreign buyers in a way that's cool for the company, uplifting, and kind of makes the company corporate executive proud, and you're speaking in this white people accent. Yes, and not with that weird Konglish. That's embarrassing. So did
they really do that?
So
did they teach a white accent?
Oh yeah, that's a huge thing also in Korea. Where,
really?
There's this whole. If you're like if you speak English, you can. Back in the 2000s, you could have a very easy life in Korea, teaching English at a 학원, and you didn't have to do anything. You just show up and I speak English, and they hire. I'm gonna give you a good pay.
Right.
Now it's been getting more complicated. So now they require college graduation because they realize, that you have been having some dumb people come and try to teach anything terrible. So we're going to require a college degree at minimum. It doesn't have to be in any particular. Just graduate college and you're welcome. Now, if they come from some weird country like India or Saudi Arabia, that people are like, I don't know about that. We're not talking with the white people, not so much with the lower class countries like India or South Africa or Philippines. And so you can still go, but there's been this viral YouTube video of this black person who went to Korea to teach English. and how much of a hard time he has been having trying to find a job because no one wanted him. They're like, "You're black? Are you violent?" All these like weird prejudices that people absorb through like U.S. media and so forth.
Right.
So So it was to show off. Teaching English back in the 90s, it was to show off and wanted to be cool, talking to these foreign buyers. And by foreign buyers, we meant white people, white executives from the United States. That's what they meant. That's how.
So I want to ask then.
Yeah.
Do you have a white accent?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like if you had,
I managed to hop onto that. A lot of people have trouble understanding my accent, I think.
No, I can understand you just fine.
I think people say my accent is a Latin American accent with a slight tinge of Korean Konglish mixed in there.
You keep saying are you saying Konglish?
Yeah, Konglish.
What is that? Is that Korean
Konglish
English, I guess?
English with these weird artifacts that Korean people put into it.
Okay.
And,
so kind of like Spanglish, but for Korean.
There's some derogative, shameful undertones to it.
Okay.
Yeah. So So I think, but I usually like have it. But I think I have this Spanglish, mostly Spanglish, and then some Konglish accent. It's how people describe. Yeah.
One of the things in talk about the education system, and especially now that you're in America, living over here, I would say, and I'm sure you might agree to an extent. I don't know. So correct me if I'm wrong again. I would say we kind of need to adopt some of that. Our education system's in the toilet. Ours is not all that great. It'd be nice if we could adopt some more stricter, curriculums and whatnot. Yeah.
That's funny because maybe the grass always looks green on the outside, but so many of the post 2000s immigration to the US were middle class Korean families coming to the US wanting to educate the children in this quote-unquote free American style education, free, all-rounded, humanistic American style education, and not this weird meat grinder that was Korea's.
Right.
But then they're complaining, why is college admissions not based on points?
Right. Yeah.
Like, this is so weird.
I looked into one of the things I looked into as well, and since you sort of follow up on what's going on in South Korea as well, you've probably heard of this too, is that because of like work hours, I know it's very popular to work like all the time, day in and day out. But it's gotten so bad to the point like the government made like a law or mandate essentially to where you stop working at 10 p.m. on a Friday. And even that, like to give people a weekend to have some, a life outside of work, that I'm assuming it's that like the older generation is kind of like against that, like, no, go back to work, go back to the office or what have you. It's like a inner fight essentially between that having time at home or wherever to have a good time and relax, to being at the job on the clock, working. What is that? Just ingrained from generation to generation to always be working, always be, beating the pavement, what have you, to make a living?
So I think what people have started to realize in Korea in the 2000s is that Korean people have been clocking a ton of hours, but not really getting much done.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Is what people realize. there's probably a lot of factors into this, but like one aspect of this is, what should we call it? So there's this weird phenomenon that's going on, which is, so let's say you're in a big company, Samsung. I still remember. I still remember this funny ad I saw. So I was getting Korean magazines from Korea in the 90s.
Right.
And there was this full-page ad that Samsung put in that magazine. And it was a general brand advertisement. It was not advertising in product, it was talking about how great Samsung is.
Right.
And the ad had a picture, a single picture. The picture was a window. In a tall building.
Right.
And that window was lit up. Their lights were on in that picture, and you could tell that it was like midnight or something.
Right.
And the ad, what do you think the ad copy said?
I mean, it said, oh man, pretty sure it said like, this is employee of the month or something like that.
Yes, it said. Dude. It says, the lights at Samsung never go off.
Yeah.
Because we are doing research and development to make better products for you guys.
Right. Yeah,
Anyway.
Samsung, for those who don't know, Samsung's a South Korean company. And I would think a majority of Americans probably only know Samsung as makers of phones, electronics, TVs, laptops, that sort of thing. But Samsung makes a whole lot more. Like, there's a division for life insurance. They have a Samsung life insurance division. They make military grade weapons. They make a little bit of everything. Oh, probably more so over there. Because again, stateside, all I know is Samsung electronics, like phones, computers, TVs, and that sort of thing. But again, over there, it's a lot more than just that.
If I remember correctly, Samsung started off in the 50s selling imported flour and sugar that came in from the US.
Really?
As the US mini Marshall Plan for Korea.
Yeah.
They're trying to prop up South Korean economy, and there's like, wow, the South Korean economy is like in shambles after the Korean War, and you need to prop it up against North Korea. So they sent all these materials, and a lot of it was flour and sugar. Mm-hmm. And the Korean government had deals with these companies and to resell them. So Samsung, I think, if I remember correctly from the history, Samsung made its early money selling that. And they grew into everything. But, so anyway, so there's that story. Now, let's say you're in a big company, and let's say you're in Samsung and you're in the, what department could it be? Yeah, selling phones, and and in 2 months you guys are gonna be launching a new phone model. And everyone's like working too late because people are trying to meet some deadlines.
Right.
Now, let's say there's 20 people in the team, what team is this? Marketing team that's working on something. And 15 people finish their work. And they can't do anything until some other team, which doesn't come to work until tomorrow, comes to work and produces the next blueprint or something.
Right.
And they're like sitting there, and it's like 8 p.m., but they can't go home because the department lead, or the department, what's the name of that? The team leader guy, he's sitting on his desk and he's not done yet, or whatever he's doing, he's still sitting on his damn desk. So everyone's looking at the team leader and he's like, is he gone yet? No, he's not gone. So
yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
Until he comes out, he says, guys, go home.
Yeah,
Then they come in. Because if they on their own decide, if on their own some new guy who doesn't know the culture comes in and says, oh, I'm done. Right. Bye everyone.
Bye.
Good night.
Yeah.
It's 8 p.m. You should go. That guy's gonna have some serious social trouble in that team later on.
You guys are gonna get walked out the next day.
So this is very unhealthy corporate culture that makes work as part of manners, makes
Okay.
work part of the system of manners of
Mhm.
how you respect your elders or respect
Right.
your superiors.
Right.
And yeah, it is a problem.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of the reported long work hours might be as a result of this.
Mhm.
Now, another thing is in Korea, there's a ton of people who are self-employed.
Okay.
It's like way higher than, and it's an issue across most of East Asia. And it's even true for people, Koreans who are in the US. So in the US, the self-employment rate of the general population is 10%. But
Really?
only for Koreans, it's 20%. Yeah,
Okay.
20%. And I think the issue is there's not enough jobs.
Mhm.
So people try to do something.
Right.
And
Right.
usually in Korea, that something is open up a tiny store that's like, I don't know, 5 feet by 5 feet,
Right.
and sell something or make food and sell that or something. There's people trying to do that. And
Right.
if you're self-employed, you know that the more hours you work, the more money you can make.
Yep.
So that's probably also contributing to the long
Yeah.
work hours. So yeah, those are two aspects of the long work hours, but it's not very healthy, and
Yeah.
People are not being efficient doing work. It's not like people are working hard anyway, although some people are working hard. Yeah, there's this whole debate like a year ago, where the government reduced the maximum hours you can force your employee to work to between 48 and 52 hours a week.
Okay.
It depends on your job classification.
Yeah.
But yeah, people are up in arms about this, like 48
Really?
hours a week. Holy shit, that's so little.
Yeah, because I mean,
People
even
work
with
salaries.
because even with my job, my regular everyday job, I can, if I wanted, I can pull 80 hours a week if I wanted to.
Yeah.
I don't like to do it, but that's an option I have. But man, Yungho, there's so much I wanted. Normally my episodes run about an hour, and we're here. But there's so much more I still want to talk about. So if I would love to have you on a second, a third. I mean, we barely even hit Chile as well. So if you're cool to come back, I would love that. I'm sure everyone else who ends up watching this would love it as well. There's a lot more that I want to discuss. So if there's nothing else, man, you have the floor. I know you have your Twitch account. So if you want to promote your Twitch account, have people go watch you on that, or whatever else you have, man, the floor is yours right now to talk about or say anything you want.
No, yeah, not so much with Twitch. I'm not really doing it in a traditional streaming sense. I guess something more is. So in order, I've been doing a lot of things to try to practice Spanish the past few years.
Okay.
And one of the things I figure is, well, I don't get as many opportunities to talk with people in Spanish.
Okay.
So I thought maybe if I provide resources for Spanish-speaking people learning Korean language, maybe I can get more opportunities to talk. So I made this website where I explain Korean language concepts in Spanish language.
Okay.
So the website is called Aigo Coreano.
All right.
It's AIGO, and then Coreano is Korean in Spanish.com. So if you go there, there's all this like mix of resources, and I really like to explain complex concepts, like things that are hard to understand idiosyncratically because there's a whole layer of like culture behind it,
right?
And like a context. And people are like, why is it said in this way? Why do people say this? So I really like to dig into that, explain. Oh, it's said this way because of this and this and these things. So yeah, I don't know if I love doing that. So yeah, there you can find those resources in Spanish.
All right. Well, I know I have a few Spanish-speaking people that watch this show. I don't know it, but you know that his website will be in the description below. Look out for that. Yungho, this has been great. Everyone, you'll see him again at some point. Trust me, because Like I didn't even get to bring up. I wanted to bring up for South Korea. You know, you guys have that penis park. You have some weird laws, like tattoos are essentially illegal. Yeah, dude. Like those are coming, people. You got penis park. You got tattoos. Even beards are considered not illegal, I don't think, but they're like unclean. Like if you have a beard, like
acceptable.
Yeah. And some other for politics, lobbying is illegal in South Korea. So there's some other interesting things I wanted to talk about. So love to have you on for part 2, part 3.
That's great.
So yeah, everyone, thank you once again for watching. Look out for Yungho coming up again, our second part. Check if you know Spanish or want to know Spanish and a little bit of Korean too. Check out his website. That's going to be in the description. Yungho, sir, you have yourself a good one, man.
Thank you.
Oh, hey, you're still watching. Cool. Well, I'm assuming then you enjoy the video. So if that's the case, like it. That'd be awesome. Share it, you know, and obviously you need to subscribe. Like that helps a lot. While you're also here, if you don't mind, grab yourself some Ramble swag, man. Who doesn't want my face on? That's awesome. That's a pretty cool looking design. I mean, look at that. Grab yourself some swag. And again, thanks for watching the video. See you next time.